People are working all throughout the ship on outside, inside, electrical, pipes are being ran. People are welding, cranes are putting down huge pieces.
At this site in southern Philadelphia, $5 billion is being invested by South Korean shipping conglomerate Hanwha. It hopes to turn this decades-old shipyard into a state-of-the-art facility and help the U.S. become a major shipbuilder again. China dominates the global commercial shipbuilding industry, accounting for 53% of global market share, followed by South Korea and Japan. The U.S. accounts for only about 0.1%. China has roughly 232 times the shipbuilding capacity of the U.S. It wasn't always this way. America used to be a world leader in shipbuilding. But with a shortage of talent, antiquated operating procedures, and outdated facilities, the industry essential to U.S. energy security and defense is in crisis.
We really gave up the shipbuilding industry foolishly many years ago, but we're going to start it up again. We're going to be making our own ships again soon.
Shipbuilding companies from around the world are vying for a piece of America's shipbuilding renaissance. Here at Fincantieri, you have 6 vessels under construction.
About 90% of world trade takes place on the ocean.
So what's the most challenging aspect in building a ship?
The welding and the construction and the assembly is the most important and challenging, because once we've concealed everything with paint and insulation and equipment, it's very, very difficult to go back.
It's going to be a marathon. There's a lot of catching up to do. It's a tall order, making American shipbuilding great again. I would rather twist it a little bit, saying, what will it take? And if I am to put that into perspective, it takes a world war.
To look at how shipyards are being revitalized, CNBC traveled to Wisconsin's Great Lakes region and to one of America's oldest shipyards in Philadelphia. At this yard on the south side of Philadelphia, massive cranes move ship components like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Our Goliath crane right now is setting the bow of the ship.
Since 2000, the yard has made about 50% of all U.S. vessels that are Jones Act compliant. The Jones Act is a federal law requiring vessels used in domestic trade to have all major components built in the U.S., and the ship must be entirely assembled in the country. Hanwha purchased the U.S. company Philly Shipyard in 2024 for $100 million.
Hanwha Philly Shipyard purchased this property a year ago, and it was a money loser, but they hope to change all that.
The Hanwha Philly Shipyard delivers about 1 to 1.5 ships a year. That is today. If you look at our aspirations going forward, we are looking to build 20 ships a year.
By contrast, Hanwha's shipyard in South Korea has roughly 24,000 workers and creates about 40 to 50 ships a year.
And those are the most complicated and largest ocean-going vessels in the world.
In August, Hanwha said it would invest an additional $5 billion to modernize the yard's infrastructure, increase automation, and expand production. The plan would allow the facility to build Jones Act tankers, export-grade LNG vessels, and ships for the U.S. Navy. The announcement followed a July trade deal that lowered U.S. tariffs on South Korea. South Korea committed $150 billion towards U.S. shipbuilding.
We love their product, we love their ships, we love a lot of the things that they make, and they love what we have.
The site got a boost this summer when Hanwha Shipping, another subsidiary of parent company Hanwha Ocean, made the single largest U.S. commercial vessel order in decades.
We've put in orders for 10 tankers as well as 2 LNG carriers to produce the demand that will juice the work here, juice the training.
President Trump has also approved South Korea's plan to build nuclear power submarines at the site. And it could serve as a blueprint for other U.S. shipyards. Philly Shipyard got its commercial start in 1997 and dates back to the founding of the U.S. Navy.
If we get to the point where we are making the right investments, we can build anything here. Large naval ships, we can build large commercial ships.
But the yard, like other sites across the U.S., faces multiple challenges.
People come and go all the time. And to keep the workforce at a steady solid pace, in my opinion, is the hardest component of shipbuilding.
The New York Naval Shipyard at Brooklyn in its final hours, a massive, sad, and silent witness to a glorious past.
The U.S. has roughly 150 yards across 29 states that build ships. More than 300 other sites handle repairs or are not actively constructing vessels. By contrast, China has over 1,200 shipyards.
We're going to be spending a lot of money on shipbuilding. We're way, way, way behind. We used to build a ship a day, and now we don't do a ship a year practically.
Today, U.S. shipbuilding is largely focused on government programs like the Navy, where half of the fleet is more than 20 years old. Total revenue for U.S. shipbuilders pre-pandemic was $27.9 billion. 78% of that revenue came from military shipbuilding and repairs.
The Navy is built for speed, so their material that they use is thinner than most. The heat from the coals, that was definitely a difficulty we had welding and building these ships.
U.S. commercial shipbuilding, by contrast, has experienced a near-total collapse. Lack of a qualified workforce, aging facilities, and outdated manufacturing techniques have devastated the industry.
The U.S. currently have 8 active shipyards, and they are building a few cruise ships, they are building a few product tankers, and also a few container ships.
About 80 U.S. flagged vessels are currently engaged in international commerce, compared with over 5,500 from China. China has also overtaken the U.S. Navy in fleet size. One reason U.S. flagged vessels cost 6 to 8 times more to build and cost 2 to 3 times more to operate than their foreign flagged counterparts. But that was not always the case.
To turn out ships at the rate of 200 a month, ships which carried overseas the armed might of the United States to decide the outcome of a war.
At the end of World War II, the U.S. had the largest fleet in the world with over 4,400 ships that carried 57% of U.S. trade. Less expensive competition from abroad, an end to U.S. subsidies in the 80s, and an increase in foreign subsidies hollowed out much of the U.S. shipbuilding industry. China has been the main beneficiary. In 2024, China booked 67% of new orders for commercial ships, compared with 17% for South Korea and 0.2% for the U.S.
What's required is not only political will, but also massive subsidies and, of course, the skilled labor force to build behemoths to sail the oceans. I really do not see that underlying reason for U.S. to bring back shipbuilding to any meaningful extent.
Kyle Purnell oversees welders and automated machines at Hanwha's Philly Shipyard.
I started here as an apprentice in January 7, 2008. The yard has grown a lot over them 17 and a half years.
Attracting and retaining talent, he says, is the site's biggest challenge.
The competition for welders is very tough, especially now.
U.S. shipbuilders employ more than 105,000 people in 2023, but a shortage of skilled professionals and an aging workforce continues to plague the industry. One reason, pay. The average yearly pay for a U.S. ship welder is a little over $54,000 a year. Hanwha says a ship welder can earn in upwards of 6 figures at its Philly Shipyard, including salary and overtime.
It may look chaotic, but everything has a place, everything has a schedule.
Over the next decade, shipbuilders will need an additional 174,000 workers to keep pace with the Navy's goals alone.
Being able to hire enough and bring enough of a workforce that is qualified that you can develop, in all honesty, that's going to be one of our biggest challenges for growth.
To bring its employees up to speed, Hanwha is sending its U.S. workers to South Korea for training.
What we're currently doing is bringing American workers also to Korea to learn from our skilled tradesmen so they can speed up that transfer of skill, so they can apply those skills to the building that's being done here in Philly.
Other U.S. shipyards face a similar challenge. Italian shipbuilder Fincantieri, one of the world's largest with 18 shipyards, bought its Wisconsin yards for $120 million around 2009.
How many months or years has it taken this vessel to get to the state that it's in now?
We have about a 6-month tack time to get to the start of assembly, and then another 12 to 18 months before we're fully assembled and everything outfitted.
Fincantieri Marine Group is the U.S. division of Fincantieri. Its 3 shipyards on Wisconsin's Great Lakes build vessels like combat ships, mine countermeasure vessels, tugs, and icebreakers for the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. The company also has a commercial business. In 2024, Fincantieri built the largest Jones Act-compliant vessel, a 12,000 square foot LNG bunker that can carry 3.1 million gallons of liquefied natural gas. In 2024, it signed an order to build 3 Carnival cruise ships.
Essentially, we're looking at a vessel that's approximately a football field long and about 50 feet tall from where we stand right now.
Over the past few years, it has invested more than $800 million in its 4 U.S. shipyards, including one in Florida, and increased its workforce by 850 workers to 3,750. Kayla Fewins is a pipe welder. Fewins helped work on a combat ship being built for the Saudi military through the U.S. Navy's Foreign Military Sales Program. Her mother, Tricia, works as a waterfront engineering manager and has worked here for over a decade.
It's a lot of different positions and making sure that you're comfortable in a non-comfortable position. Like you're in tanks, you're all over the place upside down, your head's smushed. It's just really difficult sometimes.
We annually generate about 140 naval engineers in the entire US. You know how many they do in China? In China, they produce 10,000 naval engineers every year.
Other U.S. shipbuilders include Huntington Ingalls Industry, National Steel and Shipbuilding Company, and Austal USA. U.S. shipbuilders face a myriad of challenges, including building complicated ships like nuclear submarines and LNG vessels to inconsistent funding.
Approximately how many millions of parts could be in a vessel?
So a bill of material can have 5 to 10 million line items.
But new technologies and advancements in shipbuilding could help propel the industry.
This is a robot that we're starting to use here. Normally when I would weld, I would have to be here with my hand and my hood down. With this, I can just easily program it to weld, and it'll basically do it for me.
This is one of our most automated lines that we have here in the yard. It might take a person, let's say, a day to weld one of these plates together. That machine could do it in 25 minutes.
Everything from automation to robotics to AR to VR training. These are different types of technologies that we've already been proven in terms of developing and building ships in Korea that we will now bring here.
Modular construction is another technique that could boost efficiency and help the U.S. shipyards compete.
Are you looking at vessels being partly made in Korea, then barged over and then assembled here? Or are they going to be fully assembled here in America?
Well, that kind of cooperative co-production model can speed up not just the building of the ships, but the skills transfer that we need to build the workforce here in Philly.
Fincantieri's Wisconsin facilities employ a similar technique, where sections are barged to different facilities for final completion.
This is the seam where we join 2 modules together. What's really important about this seam is, forward of this seam, that forward bow section was built at our sister yard across the bay. While they were building the forward section, we were building the aft section.
So it's almost like taking Lego pieces that are perfect and accurate and bring them up so that they can become a full vessel.
Another thing holding back shipyards, a resilient supply chain.
We can do everything we want within our fences and with our yard, but the reality is for every ship we're building, somebody has got to also be helping to provide cables, steel, nuts and bolts, everything that goes into that ship.
You need the industrial base that can produce fasteners, that can produce nuts, that can produce the rivets, the little things on the ship that you need in the millions.
And building up that supply chain could be crucial, as the U.S. faces challenges on several fronts globally, including from both China and Russia. The Coast Guard's efforts to patrol the Arctic and Antarctic regions is 6 years behind schedule and $1 billion over budget. And the U.S. only has 3 icebreakers on its roster for that endeavor, compared with Russia's 41 icebreakers and China, who is heavily investing in its program. The U.S. Navy also has a goal of building 381 ships over the next 3 decades that will require up to $36 billion, a qualified workforce, and shipyards able to do so.
When you look out, say, 20 years,
Yes.
how would you describe U.S. shipbuilding?
My intent is for us to set out as many efforts as possible to get us there. In 20 years is enough of a time to get us up there to be in the forefront of shipbuilding.
The ability is here to bring shipbuilding back. What we want to do is bring the investment, bring the technology, bring the skills and the know-how that Korea has built up over decades, and press fast forward on that here in America.